The bus to the village is a boat, and this morning it is running late because someone has stopped to drop a sack of cassava at a jetty along the way. A market vendor stacks taro and cassava under a tarp as the tide pulls out behind her. Two children cross a sandbar with their school shoes held in one hand, the sand already half swallowed by the rising water. Fiji is more than 300 islands scattered across the South Pacific, roughly 110 of them inhabited, strung between reef and open water, a place where the land is the smallest part of the map. The story here is not how beautiful Fiji is. It is what it means to belong to a place the sea both rules and keeps redrawing. This is a day measured in tides, owned reefs, rain caught off a roof, a village that had to move, and a boat schedule that doubles as the bus. Off the Mamanuca chain, west of Viti Levu, the main island, the view from 1,000 feet up shows a scatter of low green islets ringed by pale shallows, and a single sandbar that holds nothing but a line of footprints drying in the sun until the water comes back to take it. Fiji counts roughly 330 islands, and only about 110 of them carry people. The rest are reef, rock, and bars of sand that surface and vanish on a schedule the tide keeps and the calendar does not. Boats move between the islets the way cars move between towns elsewhere, and the distance that matters is measured in tides, in which channel runs deep enough to cross at which hour. Here a place can be a thing that exists for 6 hours and then is gone, marked on no map because the map would be wrong by afternoon. The eye, trained on continents, keeps searching the horizon for a coastline to settle on, for the solid edge where land takes over from water, and here it never arrives. The sea is the country, the land is the exception. East of the chain stands a single green and sand speck the wider world already recognizes without knowing its name, a rock the size of a short walk that a Hollywood film once made into the image of total isolation. Monariki, uninhabited, circled completely by its own reef, with no other land anywhere in the frame. A whole place can be walked around in under an hour here, and that is exactly the point. Because what counts as somewhere in Fiji can be a dot the sea entirely surrounds. The world keeps one picture of this island: a man alone, a painted volleyball, an empty horizon. And the people who actually pass it keep another. These are the Yasawa boat crews, the Itauke men who run the daily island runs, who read the water the way other people read a road, who know which sandbars will be standing at 9 in the morning and gone under by 3, and who carry passengers, fuel, school supplies, and the occasional sack of cassava out along a chain no bridge will ever reach. North of the Mamanucas, the Yasawa Islands run in a line that takes the better part of a day to travel by boat, a chain of old volcanic ridges dropping straight into lagoon, and from the right height, the whole archipelago reads as the 300 islands at once. The villages here are reached only by water, with no other way in, and so arrival itself becomes the event, which is why every boat that touches a Yasawa beach is met with the same word, called out before a line is even tied. Bula, a greeting and a blessing and a wish for health all at once, spent freely because a new face stepping off a boat is news worth marking. At low tide, the lagoon pulls back to show its working floor, and a woman walks out across the exposed flat, bent at the waist, lifting shellfish one at a time into a plastic bucket that scrapes along the sand with every step she takes. The bar she stands on will be under a meter of water by mid-afternoon. She gathers while it is hers to gather, on ground the sea has lent her for the morning and will take back without asking. Further out, a fishing skiff crosses open water at a steady pace, and then, at a point marked by nothing the camera can see, no buoy, no flag, no line on the surface, it eases off the throttle and slows. Someone else's reef begins here. Out past the point where the skiff slowed, the open water that seemed to belong to no one begins to resolve into a map no chart prints. In Beka Lagoon, south of Viti Levu, a barrier reef draws a ring around some 390 square kilometers of shallow water, one of the larger lagoons in the country, and a single boat sits inside that ring, the way a house sits inside a fenced yard, because that is close to what the ring is. Fiji divides its coastal seas into something near 400 registered fishing grounds, each one a named and bounded stretch of water held by a single community, and the word for such a ground is ikolikoli, the customary fishing right a clan carries over a defined reach of reef and lagoon, the sea equivalent of holding title to land. Beka is the clearest case the eye can take in at once, a lagoon with edges, belonging to the people of its shores, fished by them and closed to others except by asking. Inside the ring, the water lies calm enough to read its own flaw, and the people of Beka have read it for longer than the registry has existed. A visiting boat does not simply drop a line here. It seeks permission, it brings a gift, it waits to be told yes. The ocean that an hour ago seemed to belong to nobody turns out to have been spoken for all along, parcel by parcel, name by name, in an arrangement older than the law that now records it. The free water was never free. Off Naviti, in the Yasawa group, the same rule shows itself not in ceremony, but in the ordinary track a boat takes home. A village skiff comes back across the lagoon at midday with its handlines coiled and a few fish sliding loose in the bilge. And it has stayed, the whole morning, inside lines that carry no buoy and need none, because everyone aboard has known since childhood where their water ends and the next village's begins. To fish a neighbour's reef without leave is a matter for the village before it is ever a matter for a court. It is a discourtesy first and an offence second, and the social weight of it keeps more boats honest than any patrol could. On the deck, while the boat drifts the last stretch in under its own way, a fisherman lays a parted net across his knees and works the torn knot back together with his thumbs. A chipped enamel mug of tea wedged upright against the gunwale beside him. The water his father and his father's father drew from moving quietly under the hull. No sign marks the boundary, and none is needed. It is simply known. Inside the Sawa Ilau caves in the northern Yasawas, the ownership the day has been tracing turns from property into something nearer reverence. A shaft of light falls through an opening in the limestone roof and lands on the surface of a flooded chamber, and the water glows from beneath, pale and lit, held inside the rock. These saltwater caves are a sacred place, kept by the clan whose ground they sit in, and entry follows a protocol older than any visitor. A request made, a custom observed, a permission given before a swimmer slips into the pool. The sea here is not owned only for what can be drawn out of it. It is held in story and in restraint, a chamber where the right to enter is also the right to belong. The story of the place is handed down rather than written, and the telling of it belongs to the people of the shore above, as surely as the fishing ground below belongs to them. The stillness asks that nothing be said. Then the camera lifts off the water and turns inland, toward the green ridgelines no tide can ever climb, because the same nation that holds its reefs by clan also sells its highlands by the bottle. In Navala, high in the Bar Highlands of the interior of Viti Levu, the morning comes down off the ridges as mist, and rows of brown thatched houses stand along the green slope in lines a surveyor would recognize, their roofs pitched steep against the weather. Navala is the last village in Fiji still built wholly in the old way, somewhere near 200 bure, the traditional thatched house, framed in timber and bound with coconut fibre cord, its high roof shedding rain the way a tent sheds it. And here that roof does a second job, because the water that runs off it is the household supply. No pipe climbs the mountain to this village. What a household drinks, it catches. The arrangement asks something of the builder, since the pitch of the roof and the run of the gutter and the size of the tank are all calculations made in rainfall. And it has held here through generations who never once expected the water to arrive any other way. When the rain comes, and in the interior it comes most afternoons, it drums on thatch and tin alike and runs along a length of gutter into a concrete tank set at the corner of the house, filled from the same sky that fell an hour before. The water that boils for tea tonight came down as rain this afternoon. A valley away, the same rain is sealed in a bottle and flown to the far side of the world. The same rain feeds a tank in the mountains and a bottling line on the coast. Down where the rivers and the roads come out of the highlands, at Lautoka on the west coast, the country's sugar capital and its second city, cane trucks queue at the mill gate in a line that can run the better part of a mile, and past them, a working port stacks containers beneath its cranes and loads the interior onto ships bound for elsewhere. In 1996, a Canadian businessman named David Gilmore drew water from an artesian aquifer beneath that same interior, sealed it where it surfaced, and sold it to the world as Fiji water. And the bottle that reaches a shelf in Los Angeles or London carries the country's name on its label, while the rain that fills it never once touches a household tank. Sugar and water both leave by this coast, and the bottle going out raises the same question the cane does, which is who, in the end, paradise is for. South down the same coast at Nadi, where the international airport is the country's front door, the arrivals hall fills with visitors bound for coaches and resort boats, and the duty-free shelves send the bottled water back out again in carry-on bags, a souvenir of the place it was taken from. Nadi is the valve between the interior and the world, the point where highland product and arriving traveller pass one another going opposite ways, the water leaving to arrive somewhere richer than the ground it fell on. On a roof at the edge of town, a sheet of corrugated iron funnels the first of the afternoon rain down into its tank, and out on the road, a freight container rolls past behind a truck, and the wind that sat still all morning begins to lift the palms along the verge, turning, as the season itself is turning, toward the storms. The storm that the season had been gathering arrives with a name. On the 20th of February 2016, severe tropical cyclone Winston came across the islands as a Category 5 system. It sustained winds near 280 kilometers an hour, the most intense tropical cyclone ever recorded in the Southern Hemisphere. And when it had passed, it had killed 44 people and touched, by the government's own count, something close to 40% of the population. It crossed the northern islands hardest. Along the coast near Savu-Savu, on Vanua-Levu, roofs that had stood through a lifetime of smaller storms were lifted whole off their walls. Plantations were stripped to bare stems in an afternoon, and whole villages woke the next morning to find the shape of the place they knew rearranged. A country that measures distance in tides learned, in a single night, how little stands between an island and the open ocean when the ocean decides to come ashore. The sea has other ways of taking ground, slower than a cyclone and just as final. A short way along the same coast stood Vunidogoloa, a village whose shoreline had been creeping inland for years, whose gardens turned salt and whose floors flooded at every high spring tide until the water was no longer a thing that visited, but a thing that stayed. In 2014, before Winston ever formed, the village did what almost no community wants to do. It gave up its ground. House by house, it moved roughly 2 kilometers inland and uphill to higher land, leaving the old foundations standing empty at the water's edge, and became one of the first villages in Fiji to be relocated from a coast the sea was reclaiming. For the people who carry the vanua, the land and the community and the ancestry held together as one inseparable thing, moving the houses was the smallest part of it. What could not be carried uphill were the graves, the church, the exact ground a family had belonged to for as long as anyone could name. On Taveuni, the garden island to the east, the recovery shows itself at the scale of a single pair of hands. Months after the wind, on a slope it had scoured down to soil, a man kneels and presses taro cuttings into the wet ground one at a time, firming each with his thumb, planting a crop that will not be ready to lift for the better part of a year. The roofs go back on rafter by rafter. The seedlings go in row by row. Down at the landing, the inter-island boat sounds its engine and noses in toward the jetty, the same sound that carries the living out to market and the dead home to be buried. And the people who stayed step down toward it, because the way on here has always been across the water. Back on the main island in Suva, the capital, set on a peninsula on the southeast coast of Viti Levu and one of the largest cities anywhere in the island Pacific, the whole country gathers into one place. In the morning, the buses pull into the stand beside the market and the ferries pull into the wharf just below it. And for a great many Fijians, the two belong to one system because the way home does not end at the island's edge. It carries on across the water, and the timetable that matters most is the one the boats keep. A family loads cartons and a sack of root crops onto the afternoon ferry, the way people elsewhere load a coach for the suburbs. The bus to the village is a boat. It always was. On the wharf, a grandmother sits on a woven mat watching the gangway, a cardboard box of bread and tinned fish roped shut at her feet, waiting for the boat that is her bus. A short walk from the wharf, the open green of Albert Park sits in the middle of the city. The ground where, in June of 1928, the Southern Cross touched down on a leg of the first flight ever made across the Pacific. Trees felled along one side to let it land. And the same grass that once took an aeroplane now takes the thing the country loves above all else, which is rugby. The fast seven-a-side game is close to a national faith here. In 2016, the national sevens side won the gold medal at the Rio Olympic Games, the first Olympic medal of any kind the country had ever won, under the English coach Ben Ryan, and Waisale Serevi, the player the rest of the sport long called the master of the sevens game, first learned it barefoot on open grounds no grander than this one. On the evenings when there is something to mark, a wedding, a homecoming, a son back from a season working abroad, the meke is performed. the dance that carries a village's history in movement and chant, drummed out on hollow wood and clapped along by everyone in the room. The story handed down by being danced rather than written. East across the strait, on the island of Overlau, the town of Levuka keeps the oldest streets in the country. It was here, in a single row of timber shop fronts strung along the shore, that Fiji's first colonial capital grew up around a whaling and trading port. And here, on the 10th of October 1874, that the chiefs signed the islands over to Britain. 8 years later, the seat of government moved to Suva and left Levuka exactly where it stood, which is why its waterfront looks today much as it looked then, and why in 2013 it became the first place in Fiji written onto the World Heritage List. The capital itself once left by boat. Everyone in Levuka still does. By late afternoon, the ferries fill again for the run back out to the smaller islands, the same crossing the children take to school and the vendors take to market, the same crossing that carries a coffin home to be buried in family ground and a bride home to be married in the church she was christened in. Nobody here counts the distance home in miles. The last boat of the day loads at the wharf, its engine knocking over and settling into a low working note. And as it clears the harbour, that sound carries back across the water to the people left standing on the jetty. The same note that brought them out and will bring them home. And somewhere along its route, it will slow at a village landing, because someone has a sack of cassava to drop off on the way. By late afternoon, the two children who crossed the sandbar at dawn cross it again the other way, school shoes once more held in one hand, and the bar that carried them out in the morning is already going under behind them, the sea taking back the path by the time they reach the far side. The market vendor folds her tarp as the tide returns to the place where she stood. 44 people died in one night in February 2016. A village 2 kilometers uphill keeps its old foundations standing empty at the water's edge. The reef out past the lagoon still belongs, parcel by parcel, to the clans whose shores it rings.